If you want to start or scale your property development business to 8 figures and beyond, then you're in the right place. This is the Property Experts Podcast with Ben Richards and Jack Jiggins, two serial entrepreneurs bringing weekly insights from our award-winning businesses. In these podcasts, you'll learn how we found, funded and delivered over £80 million worth of property in the last 6 years, with templates you can use, deal analysis and deep dive discussions that will help you build your businesses successfully. We hope you'll enjoy.
Hello, everyone. Welcome again to the podcast. If you're joining us live, yes, we are a little bit early because it's Valentine's Day special. We thought we'd jump on so that you can get on to your significant halves, or alternatively, if you haven't got one, go find them. So we've got a jam-packed agenda at the Valentine's special today, where if you haven't followed our channel, or if this is your first time seeing this, we are property entrepreneurs that share the highs and lows and learnings through business throughout the week. So hopefully you guys can learn from them and go and implement them into your own business, whether it's property construction or even a different type of business. So without further ado, it's the 14th of February, and we're going to kick off talking about an event that took place on Saturday, which was Brendan Quinn's National Development Summit. We'll be then talking about predicting delays, which is almost crystal ball gazing, but we'll be talking about how we try and do that as best we can. We'll be talking about water connections at Thame. Are they finally in? I feel that if they are, Ben has probably saved himself about 10 years of aging. We'll be talking about the Renters' Right Bill. At Brendan's event, someone asked me about the Renters' Right Bill, so we'll be talking about that. Checking builders' costings. Build costs are going up, which is also part of the episode today, but we'll be talking about how to check them. We'll be talking about the Developers Club. Ben and I are members of the Developers Club, and we talk about what the legacy group is. We'll be talking about the Penthouse suite in Colney Lane, which is our luxury development in North London. I'm going to be going into detail about the first HMO that we built and the last HMO that we built, and what the cost differences are across, I think it's almost 10 years between the two. We'll be then talking about an old valuation blown away by a new valuation potentially, and then last but not least, CGIs of the Old Maltings building, which we're converting in Abingdon.
Nice. Welcome, everyone. And for those that don't know much about us, we are planning to deliver 1,000 homes and £1 billion in property in the UK, collaborating with trusted investors. If you are looking to invest into the UK real estate market and you want a safe pair of hands with award-winning developers like Jack and I, we would love to hear from you. So do get in touch. Cool. On to Brendan's event. I had the pleasure of having a stand as one of the exhibitors with my architecture practice, or architecture. Had about 5 of my team there with our VR headset, which was went down really well. We actually won best exhibition stand of the event and got a bar of Toblerone from Brendan, which I still haven't seen any of. But it was a fantastic event. Jack hosted really, the full day out on the front there. Did a fantastic job of keeping everyone in check, keeping all the panelists from fighting each other, and some of the attendees in the audience, to be fair. There was lots of good questions being thrown out. But if you missed out this time round, there's already a date for next year, isn't there, Jack? 2026, Feb the...
Yeah, it's literally the same date as this
7th,
year. It's like first or second week of Feb on the Saturday that he's already put out. I'm sure you can find it on bqevents.com.
Yeah, I think there are about 150 people in the room. Next year, I think we'll be cracking open one side of the event venue to double the size of the room to get more people in, because I do think this is the first event that Brendan's ran for 5 years. He's run a number of national development summits. This was the 8th edition, but because of COVID and stuff getting in the way, he hasn't actually done it for 5 years. So he's a little bit nervous going into this one, but I think it was a massive success. I think everyone got huge amounts of value from all of the speakers and all the panelists, and the networking in between the breaks and afterwards and before. So if you missed out, make sure that you're there next year. And if you can't wait for a year, basically get to the Central London Property Network, which is based in London Bridge, which Brendan actually runs every month. So if you missed out on the yearly development summit, he does do monthly meets in London Bridge. Anything else you want to say, Jeff?
Absolutely love the event. I mean, we covered so much. We had brokers talking about exchange-led completions. We had people talking about grey belt. Cool Higgs did a big good stint on talking about the opportunity that could be had for grey belt. We had People talk about planning, uplift, design, auction houses. We've got some good Q&A going. And I enjoyed it. The first like half an hour was actually quite daunting, because when you're hosting an event, it's very different if you're going up on a panel when you're in at 3 o'clock and there's 5 other people going on stage with you. But to actually invigorate a whole room of 150 people from like a standstill on a Saturday morning where everyone's probably bustling through traffic, wondering why they're making that trip there. It was a challenge, but I did, once we wet the whistle and got the wheels in motion, it was good fun, and I did enjoy it.
Yeah, you did a cracking job for sure. Should we move on?
Yes.
Cool. How can you predict delays, Jack?
So this was actually a question that was asked by an investor, and we have if you've been following our channel, you'll know that any development that we do a stress test model, which is where we understand the fluctuation of the end value of a site reducing by 10%. We understand the cost implications if the build costs go up 15% on top of a 10% contingency, so that's 25% over budget. And we understand if the project were to roll longer than it's supposed to take. And we only like exploring buying sites if all 3 of those things happen, the project still makes a profit. An investor said to me, well, actually, I could probably just call him out, in all fairness. It was Adam Lawrence, actually. He heard me do a pitch at an event, and he said, out of those 3 GDV build delays, what of those 3 have happened to you, if all of them? And I said, to be quite frank, we're pretty good on GDVs. We're pretty good on build normally. Obviously, we don't know the build cost until we go to tender. So from tender to complete to PC, I think we're consistently good. The delays are the things that we normally get whacked by tender, planning, legals, buyers pulling out, all of those things. And they're super, super difficult to predict. The reason that they're difficult to predict is you can't anticipate every scheme is going to take 12 months to get Thames Water connected, because some sites, it's actually a lot less than that. So fundamentally, the way that you can do it is fit these stress test models into your Excel sheets, anticipate what you think a realistic time frame is to be achieved. So I'm not saying optimistic or pessimistic. I'm saying you've got to draw a line in realism. When it comes to build costs, you need to be pessimistic. When it comes to gross development values, you need to be realistic. Realistic / pessimistic. But when it comes to timeframes, you just need to be realistic, because you cannot anticipate certain timeframes and certain delays that might come into play. So my answer to that particular sort of investing guy was, actually, I think we're pretty good in all accounts, and tend to hit delays typically on the sales period. But normally by then, the reduction of the costs that we're paying month to month may have come down, so not a huge sway in terms of the project, because obviously this stress test depicts that if the project's delayed 6 months at the height of the financial cost of the project. But I just thought it was an interesting question, where an investor turned around and said, when, in what areas, and believe it or not, a different investor that I was speaking to, we were talking about a project which, shock, is slightly delayed. And he said that he's got 6 investments out, all in property, residential property development, and all 6 longer than they should have been. That's 6 different developers. So it just goes to show that sometimes things get delayed, and that is just the nature of it. And it's all about how you manage that and make sure there's enough meat on the bone, and also have a buffer in there, so you know that your investor's getting the rate of return on capital that they should be hopefully achieving. Ben, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you've gone onto your PC and mic, I think.
Yeah. There are obviously a lot of unforeseens when you do a project. There's going to be stuff that crops up that you just couldn't factor in. But there are also big risk items that you can make allowance for, and you can jump on early. And Jack mentioned, utilities connections. That is, we've banged on about that so many times about that being a delay. We're going through it with St Andrew's Court at the moment, where building control are just being so incredibly more pedantic than I've ever seen actually before. I don't know if it's just because if it's this specific building control body that we're using, but they really, really are crossing the T's and dotting the I's. And a lot of the time there's a lot of historically been a lot of common sense put towards stuff. But I think since Grenfell, since the updates in the latest regulations, they want you to spell everything out, like literally everything, to the point where, I had a review with Tom just before this just to look at ventilation requirements, so trickle vents. And I've never really, normally building control will come on site, they'll see you've got the trickle vents, they won't really question anything because they can see them there and it's pretty obvious. But what we're being asked to do on this one is basically give them the areas of the bedrooms, give them the exact areas of the area of the trickle vents in millimeters squared, show that it complies against the area of the bedroom or the kitchen dining room space, stuff like that. And it's literally like, instead of just saying here's the architectural plans show dimensions and show the openings of the windows, for example. It shows the area of the room, therefore you can run your own calculation to show that the rapid ventilation of that window, which needs to be 1/20th of the floor area, conforms. Whereas they're effectively saying to us, we need to spoon feed them that information, which is just adding so much more admin to the tail end. Tom and I are now like running around frantically being like, okay, they want us to literally spell out every single compliance piece. So just be prepared for that. Be prepared for more building control delays nowadays. Every single building control body is looking at things a lot more intimately. And the other additional delays that we are seeing is with the fire process. Obviously, since Grenfell again, they're so hot on the fire process, and it has to be. You have to have a robust fire strategy. That robust fire strategy has to be reviewed both by building control, but most of the time they will also send it to the local fire brigade. So you've got this extra chain of comments, and if you don't get those comments back to them in good time, they're going to be the ones that delay your building control sign off. Because if there's outstanding issues once you've finished works, you've got to go back to the building control body with clarifications. Then you've got to go back to the fire brigade officers. Then they've got to come back to the building. It's got to go all the way up and all the way back down that chain, and that could take weeks. And a lot of the time, weeks means 10, 15, 20,000 pounds of interest costs on some of the sites that we're on. So you really have got to be hot on all of those compliance issues as early as possible, and hit all of the points as soon as you possibly can, and make robust arguments for where you haven't got the information. Cool.
Finally, learnings were build, be realistic, be pessimistic, GDP be pessimistic, timeframes be realistic. Don't ever be optimistic ever.
Yeah. I think timeframes is the big one, isn't it? Because time is effectively money, so you have to really be on it. Water connections at Thame. For those of you that have been tuning into this, you'd have realised and sort of understood our frustrations about how this whole process has gone. We've had it before on issues with Sunset Court. We've got it again on Marlow with various delays, and I'll come on to a story about that. But water connections at Thame, we were meant to have them on site in August 2024. And they came on site and they said, oh, really sorry, didn't know we needed two-way traffic lights because we need to do some works in the road. Fine, fair enough. Came back 6 weeks later. Oh, actually, we need three-way traffic lights. So you think, fucking hell, like, you'd think they'd look at the plans and look at Google Street View or whatever and get something in place that's correct. Anyway, they turn up another 6 weeks later, looking for their three-way traffic lights, and realize actually they can't do it with three-way traffic lights. They need to do a full road closure. So here we are, basically in February 2025. We are 6 months down the line after paying them back in probably like May last year, 17 grand to do this work. And luckily, 2 days ago, they turned up on site. They have now done the work. They've got to come and re-tarmac over the finished job. We've got water running in the flats, and that means we can then now commission certain items. We can provide certification for certain things. We can provide serial numbers for meters, and both the legal process and the building control process can finally actually move forward. And historically, over the last couple of years, Thames Water have been useless. It's been really, really, really painful, and it still is. But the other issue to this, and something to be aware of for those that are going down this utilities route, is that it's not all the utilities providers' issues. And what I mean by that is that often you've also got the local council to deal with, and sometimes they can even be just as awkward. And that's what we're finding in Marlow at the moment. We've got new connections coming in. We paid in June last year, again 17, 18 grand, whatever it was. And we've been told by Thames Water that they had booked in the 30th of March to get our connections made, bearing in mind that we've now got 5 of those 8 flats under offer and into legals. So we can't complete on those units until the Thames Water connections have been made, which is another 7 weeks from now. I've never written to a local councillor in the past until 2 weeks ago, and it was about this. It was about Marlow. Our Thames Water connection said, "Look, we've got loads of buyers for these sites. They can't wait to move in. It's looking great." We had a lovely letter from one of the buyers saying they can't wait to move in, but we are struggling with our permits from the highways team, who wanted originally for us to wait till the summer holidays to get these water connections made, which would be disastrous. But they said, look, we've got the permits for the 30th of March. So I said to the councillors, I wrote them an email, said, can you do anything your side to bring these dates forward? On Friday last week, we had an email that said, hi, really sorry, we can't bring your dates forward. The highways team can't fit it in. So we have managed to book it for you for the 21st of April, which is 3 weeks beyond the date that Thames Water originally told us. So we contacted these the local councillors to try and bring it forward, and we've ended up with a date that's 3 weeks after what we assumed it was. So it's just an absolute shambles with these utilities, which is why we're always banging on about trying to get those applications in as early as you possibly can within the program of your works. And in hindsight, we probably, even though we started works in February, I think, and we got the applications in within May, that probably wasn't soon enough. We probably should be, as soon as you've purchased a site, as soon as you've completed, you get your utilities applications made, because it can take over a year to get these applications through and works completed. So a bit of a rant and rave, I guess, which isn't the first time I've ranted and raved about Thames Water, but thankfully the Thames Water connections are now in and we can move forward with that development. So yeah, looking forward to getting them over the line.
It did make me chuckle. I had a Zoom earlier today with an investor that's based in Canada, and essentially we're chatting up, and I was like, so what are you looking to do? And they're like, looking to deploy capital, looking for a 12-month turnaround of investments on developments. And I was like, almost near impossible.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. I mean, if you need more utilities into the site, this is what's going to hold things up. Yeah, for sure. Ridiculous. Anyway, on to more fun stuff, like the Renters' Rights Bill. I mean, I've got to let you crack on with this because I can't bring myself to read it. I've seen bits and bobs in it, and it just scares the shit out of me. I think tenants already have an incredible amount of protection from the government, and it sounds like it's going to be even more in their favour with this Renters' Right Bill. So crack on.
Speak or worry no further. So I'd be telling a lie if this was all my point of view. I've actually had some help from my brother, because it got thrown on me that someone said, what are people doing in their business to combat the Renters' Right Bill at Brendan's event? And I don't really deal with the day-to-day in our HMO business, so there might be Section 21 notice service evictions going forward, and I don't even know that they're taking place. But so I've got a bit of context from my brother. I've got some context for myself, and then we will share them accordingly to you. But general comments are, I don't think it's as bad as people are letting out for HMO landlords specifically, which is predominantly what we all buy-to-let landlords. So first off, it's abolishing Section 21 no-fault evictions. So essentially that is, landlords will no longer be able to evict tenants without providing a reason, making tenancy more secure. Evicting will only allow under specific legal grounds, such as selling the property or tenant misconduct. Obviously, tenant misconduct might be breaching their lease or not paying rent. I don't think this is a massive change. A lot of our tenants are typically in the property between 18 and 36 months anyway, and we're kind of a stepping stone in their property. So it's not a case where they're going to be living there for 8-10 years and push their luck. Transition to a single system of periodic tenancies, again, not massively impacting us, because in Central Suites we have management in-house. If you had to pay a estate agent for the churn of tenancies, that might be more of a cost of implementation that you may face if you are having a buy-to-let property or you've got an estate agent that works on that. But I don't think that's a huge impact for us. Stronger grounds for possession, so landlords can reclaim property for personal use. They can evict tenants for persistent rent arrears. So this is actually pretty good for the industry. So this is one in our favour. Tick, rent increases to be all regulated. We don't think this is a massively bad one. Interestingly, there was a bill actually floated in Los Angeles when all the fires happened, because what was happening is everyone that's house got burnt down needed to live downtown in LA, and people triple Xing their value of the rent and taking advantage of that specific situation. This is kind of the similar grounds to this. So it's, if you're renting a property within that tenancy, it can only be reviewed once a year. We typically, as mentioned, have 18 to 36 month tenancies anyway in our HMOs. Buy-to-lets might be slightly longer, but you obviously just want to make sure you're on your onions to increase the rents. We actually have a commercial building and we kind of forget every year to increase the rents. Then you've got new ombudsman for landlords disputes, which is good for the industry to weed out professional landlords. So actually, one comment that my brother mentioned, which I think is completely correct, is there's a lot of unprofessional landlords out there that are worried about where this renters' right reform is going, giving the tenants more right. So not only is it a barrier for entry, but it's also an opportunity for potentially more professional landlords to excel in this particular space. And there's also induction of property portal. Landlords must register their properties on an official government portal to ensure compliance and legal requirements. Again, if you're on your onions, that shouldn't be an issue. Banning blanket, no DSS, no pets. This is, so landlords cannot outright refuse tenants on benefits, and tenants cannot will not have the right to request pets. I mean, it's a difficult one. It's not ideal, and you're as a potential landlord, you will be stuck there with potentially a larger deposit that you would normally go down the route of, but it's also limited to against rent. So I actually think that's very unfair in the landlord's favour. And what is actually the issue in this is I've known firsthand, is people should make a conscious decision of taking on a pet full well knowing that it might be difficult to rent, rather than taking a pet and then just arguing the fact that they can't get a property to let. And then last but not least, of the 8th point, which we're going through here, there's a few bits that have gone on further, but more powers for local authorities. So councils have stronger enforcement powers against rogue landlords. Again, if you're a rogue landlord, why should you be worried anyway? Like, you're probably not acting in course anyway. But generally speaking, we don't actually find it as hugely detrimental to the wider portfolio. There's huge opportunity with tightening regulations and increasing transparency in the PRS. Many traditional landlords may find the new compliance actually quite overwhelming, in that additional red tape, including the abolishing of the Section 21, stricter rent controls, mandatory property registration, could lead to the old school landlords moving out of the market and being like a bit of a recycle for new landlords. And that's obviously already coming into place with the taxation anyway. So I think if you're operating a tight ship, you should be fine, and it shouldn't be too much impact. And actually, Ryan Beaumont, who I know very well, who works up north, it says the same thing. So I don't think it's as scary as everyone's making it out to be. I think people that are maybe in student accommodation, it might be a bit more difficult. I think if people solely have ASTs and buy-to-lets, that might be more difficult. But as far as what the space we operate in, I don't think it's too much of an issue.
Yeah, I think the student thing is, somebody can move in to a house share and literally after 2 months give notice and be like, actually, I don't fancy this, I want to move out. And when you're a student, you work in the student year cycles, don't you? So exactly, the likelihood is that by July, everyone's sorted their accommodation. So if you've now got loads of voids because one of your 6 tenants has moved out, the likelihood of finding that 6th tenant, to replace them is probably going to be quite difficult, because everyone's already sorted. So you might end up with a void for quite a long period trying to fill that extra sixth unit. So from my understanding is that it doesn't include halls of residences. So if you're a big PRS, PBSA kind of investor developer, you're covered, which seems to be the way that a lot of this stuff is going. It's very, very favorable to the big investment companies who own these bigger assets, where this rights bill doesn't really affect, but your professional landlord that provides student lets is really under the cosh, and really, this will affect them massively. It won't affect the bigger players, but it'll affect the small fry like us, who just have one or two. And if tenants start to move out after 2 months, it would be very, very difficult to fill them back in. So I do think there are big implications for the student market. And do we really want, since Section 24 tax, people have been moving out of the space from a private rental perspective in spades, but the private rental sector, I think, still occupies 27% of the market last time I checked. So there's still a huge demand for this, but there's not a lot of supply, and there's reasons why rent has continued to increase and increase and increase, and it seems to be the outside opinion that it's just greedy landlords wanting more money, but a lot of the landlords that operate in that space are losing money on a monthly basis because of the tax implications, the red tape, the additional payments in terms of transactional fees and costs, and associated energy bills that have increased massively. So, it isn't, everyone scrutinizes landlords out there. We've posted stuff on our YouTube channel about, this type of thing where it's tenants versus landlords, and there are, there's so much hate in the comments towards landlords, which is, as far as I'm concerned, unfounded. They provide a necessary, they provide a need for the market. There are plenty of very, very good landlords out there. There are obviously a small few that spoil it for the rest. And they're obviously the ones that are going to get the most and biggest profile. So, it's a difficult place to be, for sure. Getting even more difficult to be a landlord. Cool. Anything else you want to mention on that?
No, we can.
Cool. Nice. Jack and I are very active in terms of pipelining for 2025, 2026. We do have open investments where we are looking to work with new partners to invest in London and the home counties. We're typically looking for developments that are somewhere between £3 and £15 million in gross development value. We also do some smaller stuff that we retain on a private portfolio perspective. So if you're looking to invest 50 grand to £2 million into real estate in the UK, we'd love to have a chat with you and find out, if it's something that we could work with you on, some opportunities that we can provide you. Drop us a message and let's open a conversation and start the ball rolling. Cool. On to checking builders' costings. I think I've been doing a lot of this week, and the key point that I want to talk about here is price variations, and the word variation is basically a swear word when it comes to you as a developer. Effectively, what it means is that there's works that are being carried out on site or that need to be carried out that either weren't in the original specification or weren't on the original drawings, and therefore it's an extra cost from the builder because it wasn't factored into the contract. There's no mention of it, or it wasn't. It was done in a different way, and therefore there's a variation that needs to happen. And your job as the developer is to scrutinize those variations, and this is what this segment's about. Really, it's making sure that you are aware that this will happen, especially when you start working with some of the larger contractors, main contractors. You might find this less often when you are working with Barry and his gang of builders, Barry and his mates who don't have the time, to be honest, and the management levels within their business to keep on top of variations. A lot of the time, sometimes they'll take this on the chin and just crack on with it, or there'll be less back and forth and management involved. If it's a big enough variation, most builders will come back and say, look, this wasn't included. We need to figure out a price for it. But when you get to the main contractor levels, you're going to have a lot of these conversations. Almost every valuation every month that you sit down and discuss, or that's certificated, will have some sort of variation because there'll be something that they've picked up on. And some of the bigger contractors will have specific, QSs that is their job. That is their job, to review the contract against the schedule of works and the drawings. And if they're doing anything on site that isn't as per the contract, they will come to you for a variation. So really what I want to get forward on this is just to make sure that you're really aware of how these things play out. So you'll see on the screen, we've got a typical kind of costing or tender analysis, tender response from a contractor. It's got the item of the description of works on the left, the quantities that are that have been assumed as part of their tender. So this might be a quantity in terms of number, so number of windows. It might be a linear meterage of what have we got here? Linear meterage of dry packing. This is for some basement works. And then you've got maybe a meter squared rate of walls, studwork walls, and then maybe a meters cubed rate of excavated trenches for foundations, for example. And then against that rate, against those quantities, you will have a rate. So the rate is the cost per that quantity. So in this, for example, to excavate and reduce the levels for a basement dig, it's £28 per meter cubed. And there's 717 meters cubed of that, so it's 20 grand. So this is the type of thing that you'll be you should really be looking for this type of detail with any tender that you get, because you can protect yourself, I think, a lot more when you've got this level of information, because there's no ambiguity. This is the rate that you're charging, this is how much the quantity actually involves, therefore there's no ambiguity of, well, we didn't cost for that, or we didn't price for that, or it was this much, we thought there was more than there actually is, or we didn't calculate enough, therefore there's a variation to come back for more. So you need to get familiar with this type of breakdown. And on the bottom example, this is a variation for one of our projects at the moment. It's got a code to it. It explains what the works were. And on the right hand side is where having this information in the top right as part of the tender allows you to then check and quantify and justify what the variation cost is. If the contractor tender analysis says that supplying and fitting roof tiles was £150 per square meter in their tender, yet they're coming to you for a variation where the price rate is £220 per square meter, that's an easy way for me to go back to them and say, you got £70 a square meter on top of what was tendered originally for this. Why is the rate increased? I don't expect it to increase. You should match the rates supplied within the tender document. Therefore, you need to knock £70 per square meter off that rate and reduce the variation cost. And unless you have that information within the original budget and tender documentation, there's nothing for you to go back to them with. So what you're looking for is information, it's data points. And I've had various conversations this week where a £10,000 variation has been reduced to £4,000 because I have been able to say, no, check your rates, check the quantities that you are charging us. Part of this fee was actually calculated within this, this line item. And this is where you will start to save a lot of money through the building projects. When we took our social housing portfolio through the building process, we were probably 2.5 years, 3 really, in sort of delivery within that business. And it was the time when we're coming out of COVID where things were literally escalating 30, 40, some steel costs were tripling within 2 weeks. And we managed to keep our budget overspend down to a 9% deficit. We only spent 9% more on our building works because of this type of thing, where we're really hot on the numbers. We understand when contractors are potentially trying to pull the wool over your eyes. I wouldn't want to say that, but they're going to try and get as much as they can from this process. So being able to push back and justifiably push back on overly ambitious variations is crucial for you to keeping your costs down throughout the delivery phase of your work. So once we finish the schemes that we've got going on at the moment, I will probably look back at what was the original tender contract price, and where did we actually end up from a finished costing perspective. What was that difference? I'd like to think that we're bringing in all of our schemes within a 9-10% overspend, and some of that will be based on just things that were missed, but some of that stuff will be stuff that would have been unforeseen, or changes that we wanted to make as a developer because it improves the spec, or we've got to hit a higher GDV, therefore we're looking at increasing spend in certain areas to make sure that we are creating the high quality product that we expected to achieve. So yeah, hopefully that was useful for some people. Effectively, if you've got a QS on board in your scheme, this is the type of thing that they should be doing for you, to make sure that you are protected and that they are scrutinizing any variations that come in from building contractors. So all fun and games. Cool. The Developer Club.
I actually talk about build cost changes, so we'll come on to that a bit shortly later. But
nice.
The Developers Club, I think it's been running for, I want to say, almost 3 years. I would say probably 2 years and maybe 10 months. But I had the pleasure of being in the founding board group, which is with some fellow people that you can see in the photo there. So Tyler, Jim, Billy, Ryan, Stefan, and obviously other affiliates. But we essentially, I left the board because it was just too intense to go into London every month and meet with the guys every month. The TDC is a great group. There's a lot of developers there doing really ambitious things, and I fundamentally needed to sort of dial it down a bit and still wanted to stay in contact with everyone. So I sort of said my piece and said it's too frequent to be going every month, and I requested that they set up a group that is meeting less frequently. So that is where the Legacy comes in. I've been fortunate to be picked to be running it. So the Legacy is once every other month, but it actually works out to be 5 meets per year. There's all of the associated other things around it. So MIPIM, UK Reef, Foundation of Development, and things that they do as part of the annual calendar. But yeah, it was on Monday, and it was good to see everyone. We nicknamed it Getting the Boy Band Back Together, which could only be for so long, because I think next month there's some females coming into the group as well. But yeah, super excited to be back part of the room and see everyone and have those interesting discussions. But to be in the room, you have to be part of the board for 2 years. So Ben will be invited onto that in months to come. And it's essentially an alumni. So we've all been through the sort of ranks. Even Rob, my brother, went through the executive program, but we are now, more or less forming the alumni, which is super important to keep those connections, because a lot of our industry and a lot of what we do is around network. And I wanted to maintain that. So that is the whole reason for the Legacy.
Nice. Yeah, looking forward to joining. Cool. If you get value from this podcast, which we know you do because you tell us, make sure you're rating it, please. And also, if you could leave us a review on on Amazon, that would be absolutely brilliant. It does go a long way to telling the algorithm that this is good shit and you should listen to it. So yeah, make sure to do that for us. Cool. Yesterday I was on site in Colney Hatch Lane, and things are starting to shape up. We are installing the insulation to the penthouse suite. All of the external fabric and the new tiling has been completed. The zinc cladding to the rear, actually, Jack, I didn't say, but we should start seeing that go on in the next couple of weeks, which will look pretty sweet. And I wanted to go yesterday because it's a really, really crucial part of the next phase. And it's setting out. And what that means is effectively your dry liners, which are your people that put up your studbook partitions and your plasterboard. They're on site setting out where all of the walls go. Now, normally I wouldn't bother because, from an architectural perspective, all of those dimensions, setting out dimensions should be, are on the drawings for them to use. But when you're working in loft spaces like this, where you've got existing rafters, existing hip beams, you've got existing structure all over the place, you're creating new dormers. There was always going to be the odd wall that is 50, 100 mil, 120 mil out, in certain locations. So I wanted to be on site to check all that at the stage before they start whacking up all these walls. I go on site and find that, we've lost some space somewhere. And I'm glad I did, because the crucial bit for us is this kitchen, dining, living space, which is, the rear of the penthouse. It opens onto the big terrace. This is what's going to sell this penthouse suite. And we were 100 mil short on the width of it. For whatever reason, it's when you're working with old buildings, it can be easy to kind of get things in slightly the wrong place if you've set it out from a certain point that wasn't visible at the time, and it's very easy to be done. So we had to find some solutions. The critical sort of dimension for us is the lift. The lift core kind of location was always the thing that sort of stopped you from doing certain things. So if the lift core was 100 mil up this way, it means that the whole kitchen has to shift because there's only 900 mil width for the hallways, and there has to be a 900 mil clearance outside of the lift. So it all had a big knock-on effect to kind of where the lift went. And what we realized on site is that actually we have an extra 150 mil of head height that we weren't sure about when, you know, the existing rafters weren't visible, for example, and the new floor wasn't in. So what we realized is that we can shift the lift core down by 100 millimeters, gain back the 100 mil that we lost in width in the kitchen dining space. I made a couple of other changes to the ensuite, making that narrower. I got to see how the eave storage is going to look and where we put the stud walls, you know, where we put the stud walls behind this bedroom, for example. I think I guess what I'm getting at is sometimes you've got to be hands-on, roll your sleeves up and get out on site, because you can have as many drawings as you like, as many dimensions on drawings shown as you like, but until you start to see it coming together, you are not going to have the best input on the space. And we also found and discussed ways of improving things. So above the foot of this stair leading up from the first floor, if we were to chamfer the ceiling as you come up the stairs, but create a cupboard off of this hallway, we've got extra space within this flat that could create a linen cupboard, which again, we didn't plan for that, but when you see it on site, and it's this area, if I point to where I am on the screen. So if you imagine you're coming up the stairs, if we chamfered the wall at a diagonal like this and then go vertically up, we've got a space above that stair for a new store cupboard, and who doesn't like storage? So again, things like that come to life when you're on site, you're looking at it in the flesh rather than sort of looking at 2D plans. So yeah, so important to just get in there and roll your sleeves up and check some of these things that are really, really critical. So yeah, and then the other thing that I just thought I'd throw in here, we have a floating front of the house at the moment. If you can see this image, we're temporarily supporting the front ground. This is ground floor. I know it doesn't look like it because there's all this space below it, but this will be the new basement, which they are currently digging out. This is the ground floor level where this steel beam is. We've got ground, first, and roof above this image, and at the moment it's just literally a floating bay window. So if you've not seen engineering works like this before, it's quite remarkable, really, kind of how we do this. But there's been a whole sequencing around how this basement has been put together with underpins, which are basically kind of concrete chunks underneath the existing walls that then feed into a ground slab that it connects to. So this has been a good 4 months maybe of sort of forming this basement, and we now have the front light wells formed to then cast the new front retaining walls and finish off that whole basement box. So super exciting times. Over the next month, we'll start to see that being closed up and windows being installed, and we will start to see a fully waterproof shell very soon. Cool. Yeah.
It always amazes me when I see things like that and you have like little site niggles and you can't seem to sort them out, and essentially we're just propping up a whole bloody building
house. Yeah. 200-year-old house. 200 years?
Yeah.
100 years. Yeah.
Crazy.
Cool.
It's a build cost.
HMO build costs.
I'm sat on my chair at the moment, but earlier this week when I got a builder's quote, I fell off my chair. So I thought I'd share it with the world. So this, what you can see in front of us, is actually the first HMO that Central Suites did. I think we bought it 9 years ago and finished the renovations about 8 years ago. It's a little 4-bedroom, well actually when we bought it, it was a 3-bedroom house, and we converted the sitting room, if you can see visually, into an additional bedroom with an ensuite. You can crudely see the floor plans that I drew there. So it ended up being a 4-bedroom, 4-bathroom ensuites house, and it was a super easy fit out, really. We didn't do any extensions. The loft was already converted. We obviously had to make sure everything was fire compliant and in consideration with HMO licensing. But it was a really, really straightforward little project, and we actually ended up spending about £50,000, including construction and furniture, which if you average that out, it's about £12,500 per bedroom. Now, this next project, which Ben, if you go on to the next one, is significantly larger, but we've actually averaged about £17,500 per bed build costs in the sort of flurry of projects that we've been delivering to date. And that's kind of like our average cost. So if we reflect back to one that Ben and I own, which is Mayotte, I think we spent about 100 grand on that particular property, and that is a 5-bedroom, so just over 20 grand a unit. Now this one, and the main change here is obviously build cost change. I solely trust this builder is actually probably making a similar, if not less of a margin on this deal than he might have on the first one. So, the relationship is significantly stronger. But this one we're converting, if you can see on the screen there, just a standard house. We're knocking down the rear extension, which has actually already been knocked down. And we're building a nice 8-metre extension on the rear of the house to create eventually a 7-bedroom, I think it's 6-bathroom HMO. We've had budgets back, and we think, well, the initial price, which we obviously have to refine, like Ben said, it's all part of that conversation with the contractor when it comes to agreeing the right price for it. But their initial gambit was 220k base build costs, and that's not including kitchen, floor finishes, furniture, all of the above, which is averaging about 30 to 35k per unit, which is, if you actually do the maths, that's like a 40% increase on what we typically build out at. I'd say, well, what even percentage is that? It's a 140% increase on what we were building at 8 years ago. And it just goes to show the way that the build costs have moved. You do have to be on your numbers with the build costs with HMOs, and you obviously want to make sure you're getting the end valuations. We will probably do a bit of value engineering on this and see if there's areas that we can save on that, because we're not necessarily selling it as a finished product. Therefore, we might be able to have a cost saving in certain areas to improve that. But it is obviously a lumpy asset, but I just thought that would be worthwhile sort of sharing. The easier way to work out the build cost for this is to actually go with our £17,500 per bed. Maybe that might just be at 20%, 20k per bed. We're now in a new world. And then you work out the new build cost, which is the ground floor rear which I would call an abnormal, because not every house has new build, and we're also converting the loft. So the way that you could work that out is 7 times 20 to get to your base build costs, add the loft conversion, add the single story rear extension, and then you're roughly getting to the similar sort of figure. But essentially, build costs have gone up, HMOs are more expensive to deliver, the rents haven't reflected it in that much, so maybe we're just out of the good times. And this is why I love buildings that don't require any new build, because this, obviously being part of a new build, does mean that you've got to get it. You've got to get all of the groundwork done. You've got to get all the drainage done. You've got to get the walls up. You've got to get it watertight, which delays HMOs even longer when you're trying to get that income as soon as you can. So any HMO that doesn't require any new build work is right up my street. But this one,
yeah, I mean, you're going to be what, 5 to 6 months in that rear extension.
Yes,
as opposed to 5 to 6 months to get everything fully
project.
finished, right?
Yeah, it is crazy. But anyway, that's where we're at with build costs. I know, just to sort of touch on that, I know HMO landlords that have been building out a 30k unit across the board regardless. They're quite high-end fit out. We actually prefer to do a very logical and methodical layout with obviously nice use of space, nice use of light, nice use of access, nice use of bedroom space, as many en-suites as the property can accommodate. But we actually do all of the heavy design stuff just purely in the fixtures and fittings and furnishing, so that we're not painting. I cringe when I see all of these architraves painted in deep blue, because I can't see that lasting the standard time, and I think that's just going to have to be repainted very soon. Whereas we go brilliant white. We do have some feature walls, but to repaint those feature walls is a lot less work than all of the woodwork within the house. So we do go with almost like a timeless classic feel, which I think does save us quite a significant amount in our construction costs, especially towards the end in design.
Nice. Cool. On to point number 7, which is talking about valuations. And I met the valuer at St Andrew's Court in Thame earlier this week. Had a good walk around with him. He was the original valuer when we bought the property. So he was just as nosy and as curious as probably some of you guys are in terms of where he pitched his valuation versus actually where we've now ended up and where we've got the offers coming in for this particular site. And I've actually done a bit of a spoiler alert. I was going to do one. I've got to animate my slides, so I've given it away straight away. But anyway, for those that are listening and can't see, the valuation for this particular project was £2.485 million for the 9 flats that we were creating, and we did increase sort of significantly the space at the first floor and the second floor with the mezzanine decks and changing the stair core, which we've spoken about on previous episodes, where getting that NIA to GIA ratio up was adding significant amounts of value. But we've also, we have also done a great job in terms of the finishes. And I think he was blown away by how good these units look, how good they look with the external private amenity, with the garden spaces. We've done a very good job to maximize the value of these, and it does go to show with the 5 out of the 9 that we've already exchanged on, the offer levels that we have accepted on the site. So anyway, I mean, this was, when did we buy it? So this must have been probably tail end of 2023, I guess, wouldn't it? 15 months ago, probably. You're on mute, but I think it was 15 months ago. So yeah, this valuation is
November 2022.
Yeah, so 15 months ago. Those of you that are in the market will know that the market hasn't been kind over the last, that amount of time. So from a natural market increase, there hasn't really been any. So all the value that we've added has been added via design, via finishes, via making that kind of customer journey right, and getting the soft landscaping out the front and making it look really, really good. So we've ended up, at the moment we're currently sat at about 2.8 million. So the best part of £315,000, £320,000 more in terms of what we've offered, what we've had offered and have accepted on these schemes. And just to sort of put that into picture, we went from valuation 200 grand for our second story 1 beds, and we've accepted 247, 250, 250 on all of those 3. So effectively we are 50 grand more, which is 25% more than what the valuation originally was. We've accepted offers at about 350 grand for things that he had pegged at 300. So again, 15% increase in terms of that. So we've averaged, I would say, probably 15%, 15 to 20% above his original valuation 15 months ago, which is awesome. And has allowed us to make really decent profit from this first phase. But it does sort of go to show how negative potentially some of the valuations can be. There's probably 5% of that is negativity in terms of wanting to cover his own arse, and the rest of it is just kind of, we've done a good job in optimizing the design and maximizing what we can get out of the site. So yeah, hopefully that was interesting for people to see, have a bit of nosy with.
It's actually the same value that I sat on a Zoom call with from last week's.
Yes. Yeah, nice. Cool. And CGIs for the Old Maltings. Did I share this one last week? I can't remember if I did or not. I did like a sneak peek.
Yeah.
Cool. So, I mean, this is the front extension of the Old Malting. So we're redoing the horrible glass and facade structure at the front and creating that beautiful red brick extension with a mansard style roof. And what I haven't shown is these. So this is they're still in draft. There's still a couple of comments to make on this, but you can start to see how some of the internal designs are taking shape with the Old Maltings. These are the undercroft units. If you've seen anything from the Old Maltings that we've posted, you'd have seen that we're retaining the vaulted arches, brick arches on the ceilings. We're going to scrub those up and put some track lighting in and make this look like a super cool feature for those undercroft units. We've got pretty sort of basic sanitary ware and bathrooms. We've got kitchens in from Mass Kitchens, LVT flooring to the floors, Yeah, pretty sort of soft palettes, really. Again, a lot of these flats will be full rental. So, we've not gone OTT on a lot of the finishes. But just good enough to get these sold. A couple of quirky units in this scheme where we've gone into the loft space. This is where, if you'd seen some of our other YouTube videos, I've said we've basically added £500,000 worth of gross development value up in that loft by adding a new floor in and utilizing the void within the roof to create new bedrooms, which is where this is. And these spaces feel massive actually when you're in them. There's a couple of photos that we've got of us standing in them, and I think from floor to peak it's about 2.8 meters in height, so plenty of space up there, plenty of storage in the eaves, lots of light coming in from Velux windows, and then relatively standard finish on the old on the bathrooms. That's it. That's
good.
That's the Old Maltings.
What's up next?
I think we've got Q&A actually.
RJ said, can he buy this one?
Can you buy that one? Yeah, sure. Which one? The Undercroft, yeah, with the vaulted brickwork. It does look very cool. I did see your comment, L4D, on the recent bank purchase video. I think you guys mentioned utilizing PD. Wouldn't this require full planning? I was interested here on anything I'm currently not aware of. Yeah, I saw some of those comments on come through, and you are right. We are trying to push the boundaries of what's acceptable there. They are two distinct buildings, but the council has taken a view of it being curtilage listed, which at the moment sort of removes our ability to have and utilize Class MA for permitted development. But we are now looking at a fallback position to use Class G, which is allowable within listed buildings. So Class G is effectively retail use Class E on the ground floor, and then the ability with Class G allows you to convert ancillary space within that commercial unit into two flats, which is what we would want to do. We've got our planning consultant looking at it, because technically, when I've seen Class G used in the past, it's where you've got a ground floor commercial unit 2 floors above, and effectively you're converting the 2 floors above into residential. What we've got in our situation is that we've got the retail at the ground floor, but you step towards the rear into the ancillary space instead of kind of up above it. This is what we're now looking at. Is it feasible to utilize Class G to convert the ancillary space? Technically, it is above the retail. It just happens to be above and behind the retail. So yeah, we're looking at that at the moment. We've got planning approval as of last week for the HMOs that we wanted to do at the front of the property. We had the listed building officer around this week to look at the internals and what is and what isn't worth saving from a listed building perspective. Fundamentally, a lot of the heritage value has gone, except for the front facade, where we'll be refurbishing windows and doors and things like that. But yeah, watch this space. I'm sure there'll be more to come on this. It's like a lot of our stuff, a phased development where we're trying to push the boundaries from a planning perspective. We've got works that we can be carrying on with now in terms of the HMOs, and then we'll just have to keep playing the planning game to the rear to kind of to get what we want. And it may just be that we go for a full planning application. There's merits in our scheme at all completely. I don't think it looks out of character in terms of the full planning route. But with the permitted development rights, there are massive benefits to going down that route and establishing a baseline and reducing the potential for SIL payments and other things that the council will try and get you with. So yeah, really good question, and thanks for your comments. Cool. Q&A. Which one do you want to start on?
Start left to right, I think.
Left to right. Cool. Adam Hicks. Oh, okay. Yes, there's a lovely message from Adam. Good testimonial from Adam. Big fan of me and Jack. Value and transparency of your content is first class. Adam actually first heard about me on the Business of Architecture podcast. If you've not been onto that, I do discuss in depth around kind of the businesses that we're building, the ecosystem, and the sort of having multiple streams of different incomes coming in. It was a long time ago. I actually have been meaning to reach out to Rion from the Business of Architecture podcast to go on again, because it was probably 3 or 4 years ago, and they are actively searching for sort of architecture turned developer people that can share insights from both parties, both sides of the fence. So I'm going to try and get back on there again, because it was a really good conversation last time around. And also Adam's a follower of the Ground Up podcast. So thanks very much, Adam. Let's go with Namis, because this was a message from last week, wasn't it, that we didn't get to touch on. Guys, what is the legal process in converting top floor 1-bed flat into 5-bed HMO within the Old Maltings building? Will you apply for a separate planning application or under PD? Okay, this one's easy, and it's I know I mentioned that we're turning a 1-bed into a 5-bed with that front extension, which we are, but as part of that front extension application, we just went in for a 5-bed HMO, and we weren't trying to play anything funny there. There's a robust case to get planning approval under full planning for a 5-bed HMO in that unit. We have the bike stores, we have the bin stores, we have all of the other tick boxes that we needed to do from a HMO perspective. So that just sailed through, to be honest. We had a good planning consultant on board. We know the HMO licensing requirements like the back of our hand in that area. So we were able to put forward a robust scheme that said, there's no reason why this shouldn't be allowable as a 5-bed HMO. So no real fun and games really with that, Namis. It was literally just full planning application to extend the frontage, build the mansard roof, and convert that whole space into a 5-bed HMO. Cool. Naj0012 says how to find a great location for high rental demand. Go, Jack.
I mean, we do a rental analysis, a location analysis system and process where we analyze multiple things. I can't remember which episode is before.
There's quite a few episodes that we've done that, to be honest.
Yeah. So just keyword search location analysis in where I basically go through the things that we consider for investing in rental areas. But realistically speaking, there's pretty much demand in any location as a population, is my view. There's very few areas where there's probably too much supply. But that's very rare that there's too much supply against demand. I do think that the rental market is a bit cyclical, but people tend to stay into their property for sort of 2-3 years, which benefits you. So if you do have a void, hopefully it's not for a massively long period of time. But if it's for HMOs, definitely go and find that episode where I talk through location analysis. If it's buy to lets, you can look at one really useful tool is property data. It extrapolates a lot of information about house prices, rental demand, things like that, to target pretty good areas. Another thing that often gets missed in modern day property is location. You can't really recreate certain locations. So town centre locations have always been popular for people that might not be able to get transport or walk or whatever it may be. But location analysis, go back and find that. We literally look at everything, no stone left unturned, even like saturation, even population, even growth, even sales turnover and all things like that. You can actually also see ratios of how many properties in that area are rentals and how many are bought, which is quite a good thing to look at, because you can kind of see if there's going to be, if it's very low percentage as rentals, there's probably quite a high demand there. And you can find out all that information on property data.
Sweet. Nice one. As always with this, we want your questions to flow in. We are live at the moment, but this video will be on the YouTube channel forever. So continue to make comments, and we will pick them up, and we will pick them up in next week's episode, just like we have done with Naj and Namis. So it makes it way easier for us and way better for us, because we can answer your burning questions and ultimately kind of serve you the most, which is what we're here for. So get your comments in. But until next week, have a great weekend, and speak to you all soon. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.